Welcome to the Insomnia Project. Sit back, relax, and listen as we have a calm conversation about something mundane. I want to thank our listeners for, I've been getting some really great reviews lately, and please, if you haven't reviewed the podcast yet, please do so. We appreciate it. Rate, review, and subscribe. I am currently at my cottage, and so you may hear some background cottage noises like people driving past the cottage and some hooligans on the street, let's say. Speaking of hooligans, I have the great fortune of having my eldest cousin, Danny Campolucci, with me here on the podcast. I've wanted to have him on the podcast for a while. Welcome, Danny.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, Danny, one of my fondest memories with you happened not too far from where we are right now. So we're in the township of Tiny, and that's the name of a rather large swath of area here in southern Ontario that encompasses part of Georgian Bay. So there's, beaches in this area, and it also encompasses farmlands, and it encompasses a marsh called Tiny Marsh. Now, do you remember way back when we went fishing in Tiny Marsh?
I remember being there, yes, with your dad.
Yes. And do you remember that faithful day we went fishing? It was me, you, my father, and your brother, your younger brother, Mauro. And I was the only one to catch a fish. I'll never forget that day for as long as I live.
No, I don't remember that at all.
You don't?
No.
But do you have any fishing memories, Danny?
I remember going with your dad. You remember when you used to live in Malton?
Yes.
The dam. Remember that dam?
Oh, okay. So Malton is a suburb of Toronto in an area called Mississauga, for our listeners who are wondering what Malton is. Okay. So and there was a dam not far, which is in Malton.
Yeah. Or it's at the edge of Toronto and Mississauga.
But it is in Malton, right?
It's close by there,
yeah.
anyways.
Clearwater?
Clairville.
Clairville. Yeah, it's in Clairville.
Right.
Okay.
I remember your dad taking us there, using our little pocket fishermen.
Do you remember those things? I wish we had them still.
I remember that.
They were, for our listeners, they were like a fishing rod that was collapsible, that would fold in itself, and you could open it up, and it would just be like the size of a small saw, like a small drill, let's say, or a large drill.
Yeah, it was
like a sawzall, let's say.
Probably maybe a couple of feet long.
Yeah, like a sawzall.
Yeah.
Okay. Not that that's a good reference point for people. They measure things in how big a sawzall is. Okay,
but
so
just to get an idea, it's maybe the size of your arm.
Yeah. Not even that big.
Even smaller than that.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so tell me more.
Yeah, we used to go there with your dad, and I remember him putting up. We used to use as bait tripa. Tripe.
Yes, that's true. We did use tripe. And we used corn.
Yeah,
corn from the can. We'd get canned corn and we just take the kernels and use them as bait. I've never heard of anyone doing that.
But we never caught anything at the dam. I don't remember. And nothing we ever caught.
But I caught the trout. That time we caught the trout. I caught a rainbow trout with that's Amanda coughing in the background. I caught a trout with corn that faithful trip.
I don't remember.
In Tiny Marsh, yeah. I do. So, have you had any other fishing experiences that you can?
I remember going with your dad, my brother, my father, going to Lake Simcoe.
Oh, I don't remember this. Was I there?
I don't know if you were there.
No, because I would have been very young.
Yeah, you were. But I remember that.
Did you catch anything?
No.
Have you ever caught anything when you went fishing, Danny? Or is it just not your sport, let's say?
Well, I remember as a kid going with my dad to this place at the Holland Marsh, Canal Road.
So that's not too far either. That's
right.
On the way to the cottage, really.
So while he was loading up the topsoil in his pickup, we'd be under the bridge, and we would catch, with our famous pocket fishermen.
Yeah.
We caught so many of these little sunfish.
Oh, yes. Those aren't good eating fish.
No, but anyway, we brought them home anyways.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
What are some of your fond memories from the cottage when we were younger?
Well, as we talked earlier today, we used to go to the Bluebird cottages.
That's right.
As a whole group.
That's right.
And we used to rent the whole, whatever, I don't know how many there was, 10 cottages there.
Right.
And that's what I remember.
Mm-hmm. I remember going to the drive-in movie.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Oh, yes. That was great.
I love going to the drive-in.
The drive-in just down the street from here.
Yeah.
Too bad it's shut down.
Yeah, it's shut down. I think they were finding it difficult because the technology has changed, and so to upgrade that technology. But I will say that there's a drive-in not far from here in Midland, the Midland drive-in that we can go to.
Well, we should do that one day, one Saturday when the whole gang is up here, like
Sure.
we used to do.
Yeah. Do you remember the last drive-in film you saw?
No, but I remember we were all here. Even my kids were here.
Okay. Jenny has 3 beautiful daughters.
I remember Stavros was with us,
That's my brother-in-law. Yeah, Steve.
and we all went. I don't know what the movie was, but we were all there, and we
Oh.
would come back like a 1, 2 in the morning. 'cause
That's right. I remember as a kid so vividly going to the drive-in. I would never stay up till the end. I would watch the first little bit and then fall asleep in the car. But I remember so fondly how much fun it was to go to the drive-in. Now, you were a big help today. We cut down some trees that were sort of, some of them were rotting, so they had to come down. And when they get,
were an eyesore.
yeah, and some were a bit of an eyesore. And we have so many trees. You kind of have to cull them a bit too, because they can really take over the property.
That's right.
And you're quite skilled with a chainsaw, Danny.
Well, it's not a matter of skill. It's just being safe. That's the main thing.
Yeah. So safety first.
Safety is always number one.
So, Danny, what other hobbies do you have that you enjoy doing?
Well, I used to play a lot of ball hockey. Not anymore. I'm just too old for that.
So what's the difference for our listeners who don't live in this country where we play a lot of ball hockey? What is ball hockey?
Well, ball hockey is just playing hockey on
The
a
street.
street, a cement pad, in an arena with no ice. And you're running around like madmen.
But you're not using a puck.
No, it's a ball.
It's an orange
It's
ball.
an orange ball, hard ball, and if you ever get hit by it, it hurts.
hurts.
It hurts
Okay.
big time.
Yeah, I didn't know you were a ball hockey player.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How often would you play ball hockey?
Well, we used to play when I was a kid. We would play 2-3 times a week
I
in
see.
leagues.
Right. But also on the street, right?
On the
That's-
it was in hockey arenas with no ice in the
Right.
summer.
In the summer, yeah. It's more of a summer sport.
That's right.
Now, were you an ice hockey player?
No,
No, never, eh?
no.
Now, have you ever ice fished, since we talk about fishing?
Yes, I
Oh,
have.
see, I never have. Oh, tell me about that, because I'm
Okay.
dying to go ice fishing.
Okay.
Take us back, Danny.
Okay. As you know, I used to work for a company called Love It Tunnel, where we built tunneling machines.
That's right. And you traveled all over the world tunneling.
And for your British listeners, I've done work for Thames Water.
Oh,
I've done work all over London and
I love England. Did you have a good time while you were there?
mostly work.
Okay.
But I worked up in Hull.
Hull.
Hull, I forgot. That's what. There's a whole name. I forgot what it
Okay.
is, but I would just call it Hull. Hull.
But you're not talking about Hull, Quebec, right?
No.
You're talking
This
the
is
UK.
out in the UK.
How long were you in the UK for?
Oh, I was 2 months, I think, 2-3 months in Portsmouth.
Oh, Portsmouth. What's
Yeah.
that like?
It was
Great bands come out of Portsmouth.
I loved it there.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
Would you go to pubs and drink?
yeah, well, the British when it comes to their beer, their ale. Oh my God,
They
were-
know what they're doing.
I'd be on my first one, and they've already guzzled down like 10.
Yeah.
They were amazing.
They're tasty. And you know what's great about having, and I don't have to tell this to my British listeners, but the thing that I love about having beer in a pub in Britain is that you're not going to get skunky beer from their taps, because their taps are always being used, right? So sometimes what'll happen here is you'll get a beer that's poured from a tap in a pub or a bar, and it will have gone off because that tap hasn't been
Right.
used. I've never found that in England.
I wouldn't know.
Okay.
Know. But anyways, so one of my working experiences was in Kazan, Russia. and the workers there took us ice fishing on the Volga River.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. This is the first time I've heard of it. You were fishing on the Volga River.
Right.
Okay, so did they have the huts that
No,
I've seen? Okay,
no.
so explain it to us.
It was just out on the river.
And did they have an auger to drill the hole?
I don't remember,
Okay.
but I do remember the vodka.
Okay, to keep you warm.
Yeah, boy, did it keep us warm.
Sure. Did you catch anything, Danny?
Not me personally, but some of the other guys did, yes.
And would you remember what they caught?
I don't know what type of fish it was.
Was it large?
It was maybe...
It wasn't sturgeon, right?
No.
Okay.
No, nothing like that.
Because the Volga River is fresh water.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that was... I still remember it was a beautiful day.
Cold? Not too bad?
Well, it was a beautiful sunny day. And I know there was one Russian in particular, he was fishing with no shirt on, just...
Oh my goodness. Okay.
He was crazy.
Sure.
Igor was his name.
Okay. Shout out to Igor.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a hell of an experience.
Tell me more experiences that you had in the different locations you would go to tunneling with this company.
Well, I've been to Russia twice.
Okay.
Once during communism and one after.
Sure. It's still a communist country, but you're talking about perestroika when there was more openness and
Correct.
yes, of course. Okay.
So the first time I went, it was in just the outside of Moscow, a place called Pratvino.
Okay.
They were tunneling a particle accelerator.
Oh, wow.
Anyway,
You're not giving away government secrets now, are you, Danny?
I might be.
Okay, well, all right.
Anyways, all I remember is walking on the street, looking in the stores, and I remember particularly one shoe store that just had one type of shoe,
Yeah.
like one size. That's it. That's all you
Okay.
can get. That struck me. That's what vividly I remember.
I doubt it would be just one size.
Without going in there, but
Right, that's
anyway,
what
it
you
was just
saw,
the
okay.
one type of shoe.
All
and
right,
that
so
was
then
it.
going afterwards, did you notice a difference?
Absolutely.
Right.
When I went to Kazan, now you're looking at, you can buy whatever you want, whenever you want,
Sure.
however you want, right? And one thing that I do remember quite fondly about Kazan, that they had some beautiful women.
All right, Danny, this is not that podcast, all right?
Okay, no,
Okay.
I'm just saying that
All
the
right.
women were very beautiful.
Okay, well, that's nice that you
That's all
noticed
I-
that. Good,
yeah.
good. Let me ask you this. Let's get off wherever that was going to go.
Okay, it wasn't going anywhere.
No, that's all. You just noticed lovely
Yeah.
lovely ladies.
That's
And you didn't notice lovely ladies in other places, like the UK when you were in this
There-
town called Hull?
They're beautiful women everywhere.
Fair. There you go. Now,
And I'm not a player, by the way.
I never said you were, and I doubt if anyone saw what you look like right now, they would think that. Okay, Danny. So, Danny, let me ask you this: what would you do when you would go to these places for work? You would help tunnel. You would help build tunnels.
We would manufacture the tunneling machine here at our plant in Toronto.
Okay.
Test it all here.
Mm-hmm.
Disassemble it. Send it out to wherever it had to go. So we went back there to reassemble it and get it going.
Okay. So you help build, and we're not talking small tunnels either. We're talking really big tunnels, right?
Anywhere from, let's say, 5 feet all the way up to like 30 feet in diameter.
Wow.
Actually, what I do remember, when I went to the UK, the machines were being flown out there, which was unheard of. But it was being flown on what they call the Antonov, which was a huge Russian cargo plane. Massive airplane. I've never seen anything like it in my life. Huge. And I just remember being stuck up in the airplane until we landed.
Wait, you were on the plane with the equipment?
With the
in
equipment.
this ginormous
Yeah.
airplane?
The Antonov 124, it was called.
Wow.
Huge. Where the front opens up, the back opens up.
Oh, like a military
Yeah.
plane that, oh, wow.
But it was massive.
Okay.
It was probably one of the highlight of my tunneling career.
And what are some other places you got to tunnel in?
I've been to Iran a couple of times, to Tehran.
Oh, what did you do in Tehran?
Well, again, with the tunneling machine.
Oh, you were, of course, tunneling. Yeah.
I've been to Singapore. I've been to Taiwan. Egypt.
You lived in California?
California. Oh, beautiful place there. Los Angeles.
Were you living in LA?
Actually, I was living in just south of there in Orange County, Huntington Beach.
Beautiful.
Beautiful place.
And were you tunneling there? Like, what were you, because you were there for a while, right?
Well, when I left Lovett Tunnel, I went to work in the States for someone who bought the machines.
Oh, so you didn't, when you worked in California, you didn't work for that company, you worked for a new company.
I worked for someone who did the tunneling work.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I was there for 2 years.
Wow. Do you miss it?
I do.
What was your day like when you lived in California? We also have some great listeners in California.
Well, I mean, my day was like, being at work by 6 but the weekend, hit the beach.
Did you surf?
No, I don't surf. I can't even swim.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're not a swimmer. Okay.
But I remember every Sunday, because I had the family with me.
Yes.
We went for this brunch at a place called El Torito.
Okay.
And we would have the champagne breakfast.
Now, you don't strike me as a champagne guy.
Well, not really, but...
But you would indulge at a brunch?
I would indulge, yeah.
Okay. And that's it? You just remember champagne brunch, or is there more to that story?
Well, no, there wasn't. I just remember that.
That was something that you liked to do, yeah.
That's right. Every Sunday. But...
Did you live on the beach?
We lived probably like maybe a kilometer away, so you could smell the salt air and all that. It was beautiful. I loved it.
So you're not a swimmer, but you know who could teach you how to swim?
Who's that?
It's Amanda, my wife. She's a very strong swimmer.
Well, my kids were lifeguards.
Okay.
Jessica.
As was my sister, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And they never taught you? Your kids, my sister?
No.
Maybe Amanda's the one who has to be up for that challenge.
All right. I mean, let's do it.
Stay tuned, friends. We'll see if my cousin Danny ends up learning how to swim. When Amanda goes swimming here, she goes out really far in the water. And she's like, because it's very shallow. Like,
that's right.
The beaches here kind of, dip and rise and dip. And so she goes out far. And it always seems like she's really far in. But she's like, look, I can stand up. I'm like, wow. I'm not that brave. I'm not a good swimmer either. I can barely swim. I went snorkeling once. And I saw squid in the water. Like I saw, and I was just like, oh my God, look at all these calamari in the water.
Yeah, so California was great. But then once the job ended,
yes,
I went to Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, I didn't know you went to Columbus.
For 2 years.
Is that when you would come back and forth?
That's right.
Oh, okay.
The family didn't come with me, so I would commute 8 hours every day one way. On the weekends.
Oh, so I see. Right. You would come home on the weekend, and then for Monday you would get back to work. Right. Oh, that's a lot of driving.
It was.
What was the prettiest part of that drive?
If I remember correctly, I'd be driving by Lake Erie, so by the shores there. That was beautiful. That was beautiful there.
Yeah, I have been to Ohio many times, and we have a lot of listeners in Ohio, and I just feel like I'm talking about all our listeners, but we do have listeners in Ohio. I love Ohio.
Yeah, I would go through sometimes Toledo.
Sure.
Sometimes through Cleveland. Depends on how I felt, which way I would go.
Do you know who was from Toledo, Ohio?
No.
You know someone who used to watch on television from Toledo, Ohio.
Oh, Klinger.
And I mentioned that because I know you're a big fan of MASH.
I love
and
MASH.
I got into MASH because of you watching MASH.
Yeah, but the best MASH episodes are the earlier ones with Trapper.
Trapper, yes.
Yeah, those for me were the best ones.
But you watch the whole series,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I know them every episode.
Mm-hmm. Who's your favorite character?
I loved Trapper.
Trapper was your
Yeah,
favorite.
he was
okay.
funny.
Wayne Rogers played
That's
Trapper.
right.
Did you ever watch Trapper MD, the spin-off?
I remember that.
Yeah, that was his character,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Older.
right. That's right.
I met Loretta Swit, who played
Wow.
Hot Lips Houlihan
Hot
once.
Lips Houlihan.
Yeah, she's a lot shorter than you would think.
Actually,
yeah.
Frank Burns was also very
Yes,
comical.
I know you. Larry Linville, is that
That's
his name?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So if you ask my brother, he likes him too.
yeah. I always liked Charles Emerson Winchester. And then I ended up, and he was from Boston, and I ended up marrying someone from Boston. So there you go. Have you ever been to Boston?
You know what? We had a tunneling job in Washington.
Okay, that's not Boston, right?
I get that,
Okay.
but we did drive out to Boston one
Okay.
time. Or just the outskirts of Boston, because I don't think it's very far from Washington, if I'm not mistaken.
What are you talking about? Massachusetts and Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C. I remember because one of the workers,
Yeah.
one of the electricians there was from Boston. And we went to his house for dinner. That I remember.
Oh, okay. I don't think they're very close, Washington, D.C. and Boston. So I just checked with my wife. It's 8 to 10 hours.
I stand corrected.
Okay.
Maybe because the guy was from Boston.
Okay.
Maybe that's what I'm trying
You could have still drove from Boston to Washington.
Yeah, I'm not going to go to Washington to Boston for a dinner.
Some people would. You drove 8 hours from Ohio to Toronto from Columbus
Yeah,
every
but-
weekend.
All right, but okay, you're right.
Yeah.
All right, I stand corrected.
And did you enjoy your time in Boston? If in fact you ended up in Boston, which we don't have many listeners from Boston.
Well, Washington, where this job was in a very seedy part of town.
Okay,
So we just tried to keep our noses clean.
good.
We didn't. I was never a troublemaker.
No, you were never a troublemaker.
Even when I was in Iran, I used to have. Do you remember? I used to have an earring in my ear. Remember?
Yeah, I do.
So what I did, I took it
It's
off.
not the first thing I think of when I think of you,
okay.
Denny.
I took it off when I went there because I was afraid that I was going to be associated as being American. Because at that time,
There was a
Right.
bit of trouble between.
and I remember the Iranian people being very courteous to us Canadians, and they treated us very well.
Good. I'm glad you had a good experience while you were
I
there. I have a
did.
very good friend who was from
I've
Toronto.
been there
Yeah.
twice. I've been twice to Iran.
Wow. I
Iran.
didn't realize
Yeah.
you traveled so much. I remember you going to
Yeah.
places, but I don't remember.
Like I've been to South America,
Mm-hmm.
all over the states, Spain. Madrid was beautiful.
Oh, I've never been to Madrid.
France.
Oh, you went.
in Paris, Toulouse, Lyon.
Lyon's great.
I've been to Perugia in Italy.
I studied in Perugia.
Yeah, I went.
What did you do in Perugia?
Assembling tunneling machines.
Okay. So you would just assemble them? You wouldn't tunnel. You would just go assemble it and then leave.
And it depends what the contract stated.
Oh, I see.
We might have to stay there for the machine to excavate, let's say, 100 meters.
Okay, and then you could go
Then we could go. Yeah.
because it would be working.
Yeah. And we fulfilled the contract and we left.
Oh wow! So that's great. You had a job that took you to many different places,
yeah.
and now you have a job that you really enjoy, and that's in the wastewater management department for the city of Toronto, right? Or no? Did I get that right?
Well, not management.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just one of the workers there.
Okay,
But
but you work in wastewater.
wastewater treatment plant.
So we will have a further conversation about wastewater treatment on the Patreon page, or the Patreon. It will be a Patreon episode because I don't know what you're going to say with regards to wastewater. So we'll keep it for them. They can handle a little bit more.
By the way, one of the most memorable place I think I've ever been to was in Tunisia.
Oh, tell me more. We really wanted to go to Tunisia.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We worked up in the mountains for a Spanish company.
Where were you? Like, were you in Tunis? You don't remember, but you were in Tunisia.
In Tunisia, we were up in the mountains, probably half an hour away from the Mediterranean.
Oh, okay. Could you see it from where you were?
No,
Okay.
I do remember, either on the Saturday nights, we worked for a Spanish company. They would bring us for dinner down at the Mediterranean, lobsters, the works. It was just amazing, right at the ocean.
Wow.
It was fantastic.
And you're not even a seafood person, are you?
Well, when it comes to shrimp or lobster, yeah.
Okay, so you like shellfish, yeah?
Yeah. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
I loved it. That was probably one of the best places I've been to.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, up in the mountains.
Fantastic. Well, Danny, listen, thank you very much for being a part of the Insomnia Project. Thank you. I've been wanting to have you on
I know you have.
for a bit. I hope my listeners got everything that they were expecting from having you on.
Well, since it's the Insomnia Project, I don't know, did I put them to sleep?
There's only one person who would find that out, and that's the person on the other end of this podcast. And hopefully that's what we did do, or at the very least, hopefully we relaxed you. I have some listeners who say they find the topics far too interesting to fall asleep, and I try to pick the most mundane topic.
Boring?
I wouldn't say boring, calm, mundane, not too interesting.
The tunneling business is not boring or mundane. It is dangerous, and you never know what you're going to get.
Right. Well, hopefully you get a tunnel at the end of it, right?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, listen, we'll save that for another episode. Folks, if you want to hear more from my cousin, Danny Campolucci, just let me know and I'll get him back on the show. And if you don't, let me know as well so I can let him know that, because nothing would make me happier than to let my cousin know how my listeners react, or how the podcast listeners react.
Hopefully you're going to get your best readings ever now.
Well, so there's only one way to find out. We'll have to just give it time. And I hope you had a time listening, and I hope you had a chance to listen.
Well, thanks for inviting me up to your cottage.
You're welcome, Danny.
And I'm sure it won't be the last.
I'm sure it won't. And Danny, I'm going to end the show, so just let me finish by saying, listen and sleep.